Hello, my name is Zhongyun. The title of my paper is The Impact of China's Australian Coal Ban on World Economy, an analysis based on GTAP model. In late 2020, China initiated a series of unofficial measures to reduce imports of coal from Australia. For instance, China's customs officials tightened their scrutiny of coal shipments from Australia, which led to delays, increased inspections, and disruptions to the clearance procedures. Also, Chinese state-owned utilities and power plants were told not to buy Australian coal. In January 2023, Australian coal imports were resumed. It is an unofficial ban driven by a political factor, since the relations between the two countries deteriorated before the ban. In this paper, we try to analyze the impact of the coal ban on the world economy in terms of the real GDP, terms of trade, welfare in the form of equivalent variation, trade balance, and many other indicators. We use GTAP model, which is a computable general equilibrium model, and we use database from GTAP version 8.1 developed by the Center for Global Trade Analysis at Purdue University, which covers 129 regions and 57 commodities. It contains bilateral trade flows and production and consumption patterns. We further disaggregate those countries and sectors into 6 regions and 8 sectors for simplification and computational efficiency. Since China, Japan, EU, the United States, South Korea, and Singapore are Australia's largest trading partners, our region aggregation is as follows: China, Australia, rest of Asia, USA, and the rest of the world. Sectors are disaggregated into coal, gas, oil, wheat, beef, other agriculture, other manufacture, and other services. In the experiment, since China's unofficial coal ban resulted in a significant plummet in coal imports from Australia, we could treat the coal ban as a raise in tariff on Australian coal. As shown in the graph below, an increase in tariff can have the same effect of decreasing coal imports. So, we make the variable QXS, which stands for quantity of coal imported from Australia, exogenous, and solve for the endogenous variable TMS, which stands for tariff. We make QXS decrease by 85% to simulate the policy shock. Here are the predicted deviations of key macroeconomic variables. And we can see that both China and Australia would experience a drop in the real GDP. The predicted GDP damage change is minimal in other regions. And the terms of trade refer to the ratio of a country's export prices to its import prices. We can see that both countries would experience a decrease in the terms of trade. So coal is a crucial export commodity for Australia, and a decrease in coal exports could result in a reduction in income in the coal sector and related sectors. So the overall demand in the Australian economy shrinks, leading to a fall in the price of Australian exports. In China, the coal shortage would make China want to import more coal and industry products from alternative sources, which would result in a surge in import prices. So the terms of trade would also decrease for China. And the terms of trade is expected to improve by 0.121% in the rest of Asia. This is because countries like Indonesia and Mongolia would take advantage of the coal ban by having their coal export opportunities increased and increasing export revenue. When we look at the investment, we can see that both Australia and China might experience a drop in investment. We all know that the trade balance is mainly driven by the difference between saving and investment. As a result, the trade balance of both China and Australia is likely to increase, while in other regions, the investment might increase. So the trade balance in those areas would be negatively impacted. Also, it is pretty intuitive to see that the wages for skilled and unskilled workers would drop in both countries as the aggregate demand is going to decrease, while in other regions the wages are expected to increase. This table shows the predicted deviations of sectoral output. We can see that after the Chinese coal ban, the quantity of Australian coal production is expected to decrease by 2.799% in Australia. Since China was the top destination of Australian coal, and now it has decreased coal imports from Australia. The amount of coal output is anticipated to increase by 1.863% in China, which means that China tends to raise domestic coal production to offset negative impact of the ban. And in the other Asian countries, we can see that the coal production is expected to increase. Industries like wheat, beef, and other manufacturing sectors in Australia are expected to expand. The reason is that resources such as land, labor, and capital that were previously allocated to coal production might now be moved to other sectors as the demand for Australian coal shrinks. In China, output in wheat, beef, other agricultural, and other manufacturing sectors is expected to increase slightly. This table shows the predicted deviations of prices. We can see that after the coal ban, the price of all energy-related products in China would increase, especially coal. And the price for all natural resources in China is expected to increase by almost 6%. And the price of coal in China is expected to increase by 3.832% due to the coal shortage. In Australia, we can see a serious drop in the coal price. This is because the unofficial embargo significantly reduced the demand for Australian coal. As a result, producers had to lower prices to attract alternative buyers. The price of wheat, beef, other agricultural, and other manufactured products is expected to drop. In the rest of Asia, the coal price is going to rise by 0.316%. And in other regions, the coal price is about to fall. And this table shows the predicted deviations of the predicted deviations of aggregate exports. So we can see that in China, the coal and oil exports are going to decrease. This could be attributed to China's increasing domestic demand for oil as an alternative energy source, which may have been driven by the country's efforts to reduce the reliance on coal for energy production. In industries like wheat, beef, and other sectors, both China and Australia are going to export more, which corresponds to the fact that both countries are expected to experience an improvement in the trade balance. Australia's coal export is expected to drop by 3.176%. The rest of Asia is going to export more coal since they're facing decreased competition from Australia. And this table shows the expected deviations of employment. So we can see that in China, the employment for both skilled and unskilled workers in the coal industry is to increase significantly. In other energy production industries, such as oil and gas, the employment is also going to increase. In Australia, employment for coal production workers is going to drop dramatically, and employment in other sectors is going to increase, since workers tend to leave the coal industry and enter other sectors due to China's coal ban. In the rest of Asia, employment for both skilled and unskilled workers in the coal industry is going to rise, which is a result of the sudden expansion of the coal industry. This table shows the welfare deviation in the form of equivalent variation. Note that we have two experiments here, number 1 and number 2. Number 1 stands for the results of the original experiment, and number 2 show the results of the sensitivity analysis, which I will mention later. We can see that China's welfare is expected to reduce by $8,580.1 million. Australia's is about to lose $4,723.22 million. For both countries, the welfare loss can mostly be attributed to the decrease in allocative efficiency and terms of trade. The rest of Asia, on the other hand, might gain the most in welfare, with the terms of trade effect dominating. To check for the robustness of the results, we conducted a sensitivity analysis, and we changed our closure from a neoclassical setting, which assumes full employment, to a Keynesian setting that allows for unemployment. So in the Keynesian setting, wages do not just fall in response to a decrease in demand, since workers do not allow wages to fall. So in this case, wage is an exogenous variable, since it is downward sticky in the Keynesian setting. So after we conducted the sensitivity analysis, after we adjusted the model with inelastic unskilled labor supply, we only see minimal changes in the quantity in QGDP output, price, and exports tables. We can see that China's overall welfare deviation is going to change from minus $8,580 million to minus $31,802 million. Australia's welfare deviation changes from minus $4,723 million to minus $5,250 million. This phenomenon corresponds to the Keynesian unemployment theory, which would result in lower overall surplus or welfare and higher deadweight loss caused by workers who would rather lose their jobs than take the pay cut when the demand for labor shrinks. In the case of other regions, however, the EV gain is greater in the Keynesian setting. The rest of Asia is expected to gain more welfare, since the allocative efficiency and terms of trade effect are more prominent. In conclusion, neither China nor Australia would be better off after the policy shock. The most direct evidence is that both countries would experience a decline in the real GDP. The biggest winner would be the rest of Asia, as some of them now have access to cheaper coal from Australia, and some are able to sell more coal to China. The pause in importing coal from Australia to China costs both countries economic growth, resulting in declining allocative efficiency and terms of trade. And we certainly there are some limitations to our research. Since not only coal, but many other products like sugar, barley, timber, wine, and lobster were also on the list of embargoed goods. But we only considered, in this paper, we only considered the most prominent aspect of the official ban, unofficial ban, which is the decrease in coal imported from Australia. We ignore the import change of many other products that might impact the two countries' economies. In future research, those other shocks can be incorporated into the general equilibrium model to see what's going on. And in the experiment, we reduced the quantity of coal imports from Australia to China by 85%, which is an arbitrary amount because of the lack of data. In future research, we will use more accurate parameters if more data is available. And that is my presentation. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you.